If UNIFIL was unable to evacuate the south in time, it would hit the bomb shelters and sit it out. There's nothing else these guys can do. The Lebanese army may put up a token resistance to an Israeli ground invasion, but it would be negligible and fragmented. The Lebanese government, assuming it is more or less the same configuration as the current administration, would wring its hands and press for a ceasefire, but it would be essentially powerless to alter the course of events. So will there be a war this summer, as many are speculating? There shouldn't be. Neither side wants one, and both sides know that it's going to be very, very costly. I think that the UN sanctions against Iran at least has to run its course before thoughts of war can be entertained more seriously. But unfortunately, unless there is a significant shift in the geopolitical dynamics in the region in the coming months, it's very hard to see how a devastating war can be avoided. And on that gloomy note, I'll stop.
Thank you. Thank you, Nick, for that very bleak picture.
Sorry.
Yes. For those of us who've lived in Lebanon, it's especially depressing. I remember Nick and I actually visited the border back in 2001 after one of the first Israel-Hezbollah skirmishes, where we found the traces of a Sagar missile. Is that how they're...
That was the scene of the abduction of 3 Israeli soldiers in October 2000, which kicked off the Sheba Farms
Right,
campaign.
And those were the days when they had Sagars and Katyushas, tiny little short-range missiles that looked like toys compared to what they have now. Anyway, I won't... we have a lot of people here and a lot of questions, so I'm just going to go ahead and open the floor to questions. Mona Yakubian, please, in the back here.
Hi, Mona Yakubian from the U.S. Institute of Peace. Nice to see you, Nick. Taking your last sort of gloomy note, I wonder if we could try and turn it around a little bit and ask what you think the United States and others could do to try to avert the disaster that you seem to see looming on the horizon.
For me, I have to look at this on the big picture way. I think that the only way that you're going to try and fend off a possibility of a war and try and resolve these kind of situations is to strike a deal with the Iranians, come to an accommodation with the Iranians, because when you do that, you get the trickle-down effect, and it's not going to just have an impact on what Syria is up to in the region or what Hezbollah is doing. It's going to go into the heart of the Arab-Israeli conflict. To go as a ground floor level and look at these issues, whether it's trying to engage in kind of a tactical initiatives, I can't really see it working. I'm not a policy wonk, so I don't have any great ideas or plans about this, but it does seem to me from that if you're going to try and resolve this, it has to be at the top level, because only the Iranians can really have that kind of power over Hezbollah to try and calm the situation down there.
So given that it's unlikely that there will be an American-Iranian peace treaty anytime soon, then do you think a war, not the summer, but is eventually inevitable?
I think a war, look, the situation now reminds me of the period between 2000 and 2006. During that time, for me and some others, it was clear a war was coming. It was just a question of what was going to start it and when. At that period, the Israelis were much more relaxed about the situation along their northern border. Obviously, they were dealing with the Al-Aqsa Intifada, which took up most of their time. And Hezbollah was vigorously preparing for another war, as we've explained, with all the bunker networks and reinforcing its weapons arsenal and so on. But I think we're into the same dynamic now, the difference being that the Israelis are also preparing themselves for another war, for another round with Hezbollah. But perhaps the good thing about this is that, before 2006 there was a kind of balance of terror along the border, which basically ran that Hezbollah would needle the Israelis in the Sheba farms, go and hit the Israelis in the Sheba farms once every couple of months. It didn't really do any harm. The Israelis smothered their bunkers, their positions with reinforced concrete, put up anti-missile fences, this kind of thing. No civilians up there. No civilians were going to get hurt when Hezbollah fires a few mortar rounds into the Sheba farms. For me, it was always a useful kind of safety valve. But both sides knew the limitations. If Hezbollah, for instance, got overly aggressive and started launching major attacks across the border directly into Israel, then they would run the risk of the Israelis saying, right, we've had enough of this, and clobbering Hezbollah, and then you get into a situation of the 2006 war, which they didn't want. So there was that kind of balance of terror. That is even more the case now. You haven't had a shot fired across the border by Hezbollah into the Sheba farms or elsewhere since 2006. They don't want to give Israel any pretext for an attack while they're busy getting ready for making their own preparations. And by the same token, I mean, I think the Israelis don't want to get involved. For the Israelis, they're having the quietest period along their northern border since '68. Great. They can live with that, I think, for the time being, despite being deeply unhappy with what Hezbollah is up to in terms of preparations.
Is the gentleman in the back there?
Sir, Everlolia, U.S. European Command. One of your comments, you talked about that the Hezbollah believes with the next war that it's going to essentially reshape the balance of power, possibly break Israeli, I don't know if it's political will or military power in terms of its relationship there. Do you view that as a shift in rhetoric from Hezbollah? Is that consistent with things that they've said or believed before, or is that something new?
It's new in terms of the certainty with which they convey this position. I remember talking to Hezbollah officials around 2002, 2003, at the height of the Al-Aqsa Intifada, and I remember one of them saying that, the end of Israel is coming, it's drawing closer, we see what the Palestinians are doing, their cities are now ghost cities, the Israelis all want to leave and go to Europe or America. And I remember asking him, I was saying, so how long do you think it's going to be? When is Israel going to be destroyed? And he was saying, well, it could be 50 years, but more likely 10 now. So that would basically mean that Israel's got another couple of years by this calendar. But the discourse after 2006 has kind of intensified. And the Nasrallah in particular has been speaking about, on many occasions, and this is filtered down to other officials talk about this as well, including the guys on the ground who absorb all this, that we are getting closer to a kind of a defining conflict that will change the shape of the region. I mean, when you talk to the guys on the ground, they believe the seventh war with Israel is going to be the last one. That's it, we're going to win the end. Obviously, the officials have more of a nuanced view of this. But I think that the idea is that Hezbollah wants to achieve the kind of military capability, obviously in coordination with the Iranians and with the Syrians, and maybe with Hamas to what extent that they can down in Gaza, but to have this resistance front that is going to kind of participate collectively in the next war, to crush and humiliate Israel. I put it in these terms that they want to undermine the morale of the Israelis. I think they know they're not going to destroy Israel as such. I mean, they want to try to weaken it as a powerful force in the Middle East, so that Israel no longer has that qualitative military edge that can kind of dictate the course of events within its immediate environment, that it kind of retreats within itself a little bit to the betterment of its opponents.
Quick question from somebody in the overflow room, Wasim Mardini, Foundation for Middle East Peace. How might Hezbollah change its strategy or tactics if Israel implements the missile defense system that has been discussed recently?
The Hezbollah will have been watching very carefully the fact that the Obama administration apparently is going to help fund I believe it's the Iron Dome system, which is going to is designed for the shorter range rockets within the arsenals of Hamas and Hezbollah. That's from the very short range Qassam rockets that Hamas has, to the kind of Fajr 75 kilometer range stuff that Hezbollah has.